Hey guys, so in today's video we're going to be going over lists part 3. If you like, please feel free to check out my other videos where I do go over lists part 1 and 2. It's just kind of the basics of adding data to lists, taking away data, and so on. But for today's video we're going to start off with how to reverse a list, and then we're going to get into using kind of what the list function does. I'll go over a little bit of what the range function does, but just know that range will be used later on in future videos with for loops and possibly creating my own algorithms, and I'll show you how to use that. Likewise, I'll go over also just quickly what a step would be with range, and then we're going to go ahead and use the join method as well as the zip. We're going to be zipping lists together, and that'll be quite fun and it'll be quite useful. So let's just dive right in. So what I have established right now in front of us is I have a mylist and a mylist2. And if we were to go ahead and print these, obviously we would get the list printed out. Now, if we want to, for example, reverse a list in the order that it currently has, we could use the .reverse function, and that will actually print nothing. But if we do my list again, what we will get is we will get the list printed in reverse order. So notice that none is here. And again, we're getting none because no real value is really being returned to us. All that's happening is we're saying, hey, Python, go ahead and reverse the list. And that's what it does with this step. And then it'll go ahead and when we decide to print it out again, it'll go ahead and print out the reverse order of it. Now that's one way of doing a reverse. The second way of reversing the order of the list would be to go ahead and add some, act as if we're going to use slices with the list, but rather than slicing like a portion of the list, what we're going to do is we're going to have two colons. I remember for the first side, this, like where the cursor is right now, this will always be the start. This will always be the stop. It'll go up to but not including, and then this will be the step. Now, in order to reverse it, what we would do is we do -1. And that will go ahead and return your list in a reverse order. Now, you guys could go ahead and play around with doing like 1, -1, -2, and so on, and just seeing like what you'll get. But ultimately, by getting the reverse order of the list itself, you'll do negative whatever number you want. And now for this example, we have -2. So we're starting at false, and then we skip 1, and then we go to 2, which is C, and then we skip 1, and then we go to A, and then again skip 1, and we go to 2, and then we skip 1, but there's nothing there to go to, so that's why it stops at 2. So that's just a couple of examples of how to reverse your list. So you could either do a .reverse, which we'll go ahead and put right here, so you guys could reference it, .reverse, or you could do steps, and then just -1 or whatever the number might be, or -x, if that helps. Next, we'll go ahead and move on to the list function. For those of you that kind of don't know, the list function will just turn whatever we have into like a list. So let's just do 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead and print this out. And then what'll happen, I might get the error. Yep, I know to get the error. So it expected at most 1 argument, but I got 3. So the list will turn a tuple. So let's turn that into a tuple. It'll turn something like a tuple into a list. Ultimately, it needs to have a group of items that it can then turn into a list itself. For this example, I went ahead and used a tuple. Let's actually change this to a set. Go ahead and run it again. But ultimately, it needs like a group or an item, a group of items to be able to turn into a list itself. Next, we'll go ahead and move on to the range function. And what the range function will do is it'll go ahead and return like a range of items for us. So what I mean by this is we'll call range. We'll start at 1 and we'll go up to, but not including, 100. And now if we go ahead and print this, we'll just get range printed out. But if we say, for example, turn this into a list, what would happen is we would get all the numbers printed out and it would go all the way up to 99. So just remember, you start at 1. So this one will actually start at 1. Instead of like starting at 0 with the list, the range function will go ahead and allow us to start at 1. And it'll go up to, but not including, 100. And we could even add steps. So we could do this in steps of 3. So if we were to print this out, we would then have a list of items that would count up to 100 in steps of 3. But again, it wouldn't actually go up to 100. And then so just kind of as a bit of a reminder, I'll be going over how to use the range function with for loops and while loops and whatnot in future videos. Just know that the range can be turned into a list, and likewise it'll just count all the way up to the items that we want it to count up to. And rather than using steps, you could also just use the object like 100, and then again it'll go ahead and return the items in the list as long as you use the list function with the range function. And so next we'll go ahead and move on to the .join method. And now .join is usually used with string values I mean. So let's go ahead and create a new list, and we'll call this string list. And we'll go ahead and add the values of hello, my name is Bilbo from the Shire. So when it comes to the join method, if we were to go ahead and use it, what we would do is we'd go ahead and do a string, and then we do .join, and then we go ahead and add the variable, which would be string list. So what would happen is each one of these values is adding a space because we added, well, it's pretty much just a space. So for example, we would go ahead and use an exclamation point. We'd get exclamation points printed in between each of the items of the list. And likewise, just kind of if we added really kind of whatever, plus, we would get that added to the list itself. So just know that .join will be used with strings, and it'll go ahead and just blend, or it'll go ahead and bring together the items within the string list and join it to really whatever we want to join it to. So next, we're going to go ahead and move on to the zip function. And what zip will do is it'll go ahead and bring together two lists, and it's kind of, you can think of it like a zipper, like a real zipper. So what I mean by this is, let's say, for example, we wanted to be able to join together my list and my list 2. What we would do is we'd go ahead and let's create a my list 3. And we're going to go ahead and set that equals to zip. And then we'll go ahead and do my list. And then we'll do my list 2. Now I might be moving a bit quick for some, but just know that you can always check your docs string as long as you have one available or installed in your IDE. Likewise, I'm using Kite for mine, but that was just kind of like a little side note, so you could see like how I know when to add either an object or an iterable, or just kind of really whatever. But just know that you can use the zip function with the list, or with joining two lists together. And if we were to go ahead and print my list 3, we wouldn't actually get what we were hoping, but we'd be able to see the zip file in memory like the object. But in order to see them join together, we would use list, the list function, and we'd be able to go ahead and print that out. Now, to kind of clarify what I've been speaking on, just like as a quick recap, because I know it's been a lot, All I'm doing right here is I'm establishing another variable, and we're going ahead and calling the zip function, and we're doing it zip together or join together the first list with the second list. And we see the output 1, 4, 2, 5, right? So we're getting 1 with 4, 2 with 5, and so on. And it's just joining each one of these values together. Now that's what the zip method will go ahead and do for us. Now the only way that we were able to print this out is because we called the list method, and we were able to essentially just kind of encapsulate, like we did right here, this variable below. So like if I was to go ahead and get rid of my list 3 and just do print list to make this a little easier to read, we would be able to see everything joined together. Now we could even include the additional string, but if we were to do that, string list, we would be able to join each value to the appropriate index that it has for us. So for example, we only go up to Bilbo from the Shire, which would be B and E, and then C and F would be left out, and true and false and true. And that's because when you zip lists together, it'll go ahead and zip up to the last index position of the shortest list. And finally, we'll go ahead and move on to the unpacking lists. And we're going to go ahead and create a new list for this. So let's go ahead and let's create a new list. Let's call it A, B, C. And we'll set it equals to 1, 2, 3. So our list actually is 1, 2, 3, and we're setting it equal to A, B, C. Now, for those of you that might have forgotten, you can do the same thing with just like variables without a list. But because we're working with lists, I figured I'd just show you this example. And what will happen is if we print A, B, C, if we were to go ahead and print this out, we would get 1, 2, and 3 printed out. And that's because we have A being pretty much index 0, B index 1, C index 2. Now, when it comes to unpacking lists, if, for example, we had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, what would happen is if we needed to print out the remainder of the items, we would use a star, and then let's call this rest, or let's call it remainder. If we were to go ahead and print out the remainder, what would happen is we'd have the remainder of the items printed out. So if you noticed before I added the star and the remainder variable, that I'm getting the list highlighted, as in there's too many values to unpack. So in order to unpack it properly, what we would need to do is we need to use the star and then whatever variable we want to call. So that's just kind of a cool little trick to remember when working with lists. Just kind of as a quick little recap, what we went over today is we worked on how to reverse a list by using steps, and likewise by using the .reverse method. We also went over the list function and the range function. And the range function I'll go ahead and go over in another video, but just know it'll be used for loops. Likewise, I went over just kind of how to use steps in range, so we could do 0, 100, 2. Likewise, you could even do a -1, and I'll put that as a practice test for you guys, or practice in the below. And likewise, we went over the .join method. Now the join will go ahead and obviously it'll join string values together, and you'll be able to have some fun with creating sentences and whatnot. And then finally, we went over the zip method. And again, I'll provide additional resources in the description below, but ultimately zip will go ahead and zip together or join together the lists, much like zipping up a jacket. Finally, we just went over unpacking lists and how we could use the star plus whatever variable name you want to unpack the remainder of the items of the list when printing it out below here. So I'll go ahead and leave additional practice steps in the description and link below. It'll go ahead and lead you to my GitHub. Feel free to click on the link and then go through the practice questions I'll leave for you guys. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for watching this video today. Please feel free to check out some of my other videos where I go into Python programming, and I'll look forward to seeing you in my future videos. So thanks for checking this out, guys.